Analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, Michael Borsicki, a well-known face on the show, joins us now from Kyiv. Michael, good to see you. Let's first of all, what has been the reaction, I wonder, to those $60 billion in aid to Ukraine being blocked in Congress? Was Ukraine expecting this?
Yeah, sure. Good to be with you, Lisa. First of all, we're sitting in the darkness here in Kyiv because there's been a massive power outage, and I'm right next to the government district, so that's interesting. But the mood here, I would say, is very dire. A lot of people here in Ukraine had really thought that that the United States had their backs. But of course, what happened, domestic politics began to seep into this whole debate about aid to Ukraine. But the Ukrainians, they will tell you, if you talk to them in person, that we will fight this alone if need be, because their argument, and it's a very legitimate argument, I think, is that if Mr. Putin is not held back, he will come for more. And that could be the Baltics, it could be neighboring NATO country, but he needs to be pushed back. And, another quick factoid, if you will, what Ukraine has managed to do in almost 2 years of war, with about 3 or 4% of the U.S. military budget and aid from other states, they've basically destroyed 50% of conventional military capability in Russia. That's a real deal.
So what does this mean then in terms for the counteroffensive? Of course, we haven't touched much on it because obviously the focus has been taken away by the conflict in Gaza. How does this impact potentially this impasse, or if there is no funding here, no money, no extra money, how does that impact, Michael, the battlefield and those gains that have been made? What are you hearing from your contacts on the ground?
Sure. Yeah, I spoke to a senior Ukrainian diplomat today, and they reminded me that the counteroffensive shouldn't be measured in inches or kilometers. And they also told me that, a big problem is the mined areas facing the Ukrainians. There are multiple kilometers of barriers that they have to go through. The other thing that Ukraine is begging for but hasn't yet received are longer range from those U.S. missiles being supplied, for example, the ATACMS missiles. Not only do they need more range, maybe double what they have now because they're only about 150 kilometers, but more power. I was told at a closed-door briefing in New York, that if they were given what they asked for, if they did send a missile in the direction of Mr. Putin's pet project, the Kerch Strait Bridge, it would not only put a hole in it, it would obliterate it completely. So that's a strategic, that's a legitimate military target, and that's the type of things the Ukrainians need to destroy in order to help them win this war.
And you said in your first answer, Michael, that the mood was dire. You've given us a perspective of the battlefield. But I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that in the corridors of power in Kyiv, there's also some tension, reported tension between President Zelensky and Ukraine's military chief, who recently wrote a piece, said that the front line had reached a stalemate. This is what he said: there will most likely be no deep and beautiful breakthrough. How palpable are these tensions?
Well, I suppose after almost 2 years of war, one can expect some kind of divisions to bubble up to the surface, and then it becomes public. But because, for the most part, the Zelensky administration has been able to project a very unified front to the West. And of course, this is very, very important to donors. You don't want your chief of staff contradicting your president. But I think that they are united on one thing, and that is not giving up any territory. I spoke today to diplomats, and they said there's no way we're going to give up, for example, the Donbass or Crimea. And number two is that they're so intent on winning this war that they're also putting up with so many other things. For example, the psychological problems that we're seeing emerge in hospitals here from people who were at the front line. Also, there's been protests, too, as you probably saw, of mothers and wives saying the men and women are spending too long at the front. These tensions are all bubbling up. And one more thing, also questions about the millions, the 10 million or so who left Ukraine. If this war drags on, will they come back? Because the Ukrainian economy really needs them. You can really notice the slowdown here.
Yeah, after 2 years, like you say, Michael, these are very important questions. Michael Borsicki, really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us and for that analysis. Thank you, Michael. And still